Hello, Stratters. It's CreepEvee, and we are back with another episode of MTG News. Pretty sure this is the second episode, and it has been a while. We haven't had too many big stories to cover until now. I know I'm a little bit late here as far as this news goes, but I've been a little bit busy. Today is Valentine's Day, and I'm single, so I'm not busy today. So today we're going to talk about this ban list update. And I'm going to look at this from a few different angles. I'm going to try to make it not overly long. But for the people that want the very simple yes or no, good or bad, I'm fine with this list. I don't find it to be bad at all. I don't find it to really be all that great. I just see it as pretty inconsequential to a certain extent, but we'll get into that. First, I actually want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! So I know that everybody is turning off now, but I do play this game still for some reason. And we actually had a very big ban list shakeup a couple days before the ban announcement for Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf came out. It was an interesting list. We saw a lot of things start coming off of the ban list, or at least being partially taken off. You see, in Yu-Gi-Oh! They have a ban list where you might be limited to being able to play 1 or 2 copies instead of the full 3 in that game. But this card, Apocryph Fort Towers, one of my favorite cards of all time in this game, was banned for quite a while and now is legal at 1 copy. This card was banned very quickly after its release. It was incredibly powerful and was incredibly feared. People were very happy to see this hit the ban list. I played the deck and I was still pretty happy to see it banned. The card was getting really out of hand, and I think that it was kind of universal among the community that this was probably a good thing. I was sad to see it go, but it was pretty well understood. The card is now back, as I said, and nobody cares. And the reason why is because the card just isn't relevant anymore. There's so many cards that have come around that have changed the game and changed the power level of the game and what aspects of cards are strong or weaker than they were before. And Towers just can't compete anymore. There will be people that try to make this deck work. God knows I will, because I'm just like that. But this deck is never going to see relevance again. And there are some things that are currently still on the list that affect its ability to continue. But even if they were to come off, Towers itself is no longer a threat. Now, granted, it is still at 1, so they're recognizing it as a threat, but nobody played it at more than 1. You just needed 1 copy. And it's one of those cards. Konami has a pattern of taking something off the list slowly. So if it's banned, they'll put it to 1, and then by the next list it'll be completely off. And that's most likely the pattern that we're going to see with Towers here. But the reason that I bring you this little anecdote is because I feel like Bloodbraid Elf and Jace the Mind Sculptor kind of fall into that same category. And also, it's a good example of why they may have still been on for so long. Towers has been pretty irrelevant for a while, but it's one of those things where it's easier to put something on a ban list than it is to take it off, right? If you have a card that's completely overpowered, everybody wants to see it go on the ban list. They're afraid of it. But everybody's just kind of happier with it still on the ban list than not. So things tend to stay banned in pretty much any game that you play. They tend to stay there for a while. And that is definitely the case with Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace has been banned since Modern was created. When Modern was created, the initial ban list was basically based off of what was banned in Standard. And Jace the Mind Sculptor and, oh, what is it? Oh, it'll come to me. But the core lady that puts out the equipments, she was also one of the first to Stoneforge something. But she was one of the first to be put on the list, as well as Jace. They got put together on the same iteration of the ban list, I believe. So it's been there because it was broken in standard, and as we all know, standard is obviously more limited in card pool, so it is going to tend to be weaker overall. So it's very easy for a card to, well, easier for a card to become overpowered in standard than it is in modern. And that was something that Wizards would have to adapt to and realize that they could not continue to base the ban list off of what goes on in standard, and instead started to look towards legacy to decide on bannings. And that led to a few other changes, but overall we slowly saw the format develop in and of itself, and then the ban list became about modern instead of trying to base it off of something else. So the question now is Jace overpowered in modern? Not in the context of legacy or in the context of standard. Is he overpowered in modern? And for me, the answer is definitely no. I feel like he's definitely been on the list. I can see why in modern's original inception, but the card, I don't know whether I would have even put it on the ban list then. The card's incredibly strong, don't get me wrong. You're essentially getting to play Brainstorm basically every turn for free. So you get so much value with it over time. As far as the return target creature to hand ability, kind of hit or miss. And you really did not see too many people hitting this -12. You had to have an opponent that really was not getting anything done to hit that mark. So that really wasn't what you would see from him. It was just a card that was too strong for standard at the time. Granted, it was a pretty strong standard at that point, but our ban list for modern just kind of carried over, and that's why Jace was there. And I don't know whether I would have kept him on the ban list this long. I mean, he's been there since modern's inception, so he's been there, and it almost became a joke in the Magic community, whether Jace was meant to stay. He is the veteran of the ban list, if you would. And really, I think it was universal that most people just felt like it was an unnecessary ban. But there wasn't exactly an outcry for him to get off the ban list because, as I said, generally, it's easier for something to stay on the ban list than it is for it to come off of the ban list. I think that that's definitely evident in what we've seen in Jace. Now, we'll quickly go over Bloodbraid Elf. Bloodbraid Elf really was great because of the Cascade ability and 3 power. Pretty strong, but Cascade was the reason. When Bloodbraid Elf was originally banned, which was in 2013, the statement that Wizards put out was that they felt that it was impeding the variety of standard at the time. I was looking over some of their original statement on that, and I believe that at that point the last modern event was 31% Jund, and that's obviously a huge chunk. Not incredibly overwhelming, but a huge chunk. And Bloodbraid Elf was the card that really drove it to that point. If you think about it, it's the cards around Bloodbraid Elf, really, that are as strong as they are, and the reason why Jund is still strong to this day, and still one of my favorite decks to play. The reason why is just those cards were very strong, and this was an easy way to get them out while at the same time getting out some damage. Now, one thing to pay attention to now in the context of Modern and whether these cards are safe for the format is that both of these cards are 4 cost, and I think that that's one of the biggest things that you want to keep in mind when you look at this format going forward and how it will affect them. And I think that that is the entire reason why these cards will not be extremely impactful. Now, Bloodbraid Elf, I feel, has a lot more potential than Jace does. And really, like I said, does boil down to this cost, right? So if you're playing blue in any of its iterations, which it has quite a few in Modern, you want to keep your blue mana open to cast your counters. That's your entire game plan. To pay out 4 mana is a huge investment for blue. They're used to playing 1-drop spells or 2-drop spells. To spend that much mana and also to have that much mana tapped down. If you're playing blue, you don't have a ton of defense, okay? So let's say that you're going to be doing this most likely on turn 4. It will be your first opportunity. Generally, your blue decks don't have any ramp. So you're on turn 4. Your opponent probably on 4, potentially 5 mana going back into their turn, and you as a blue player have just tapped out to play Jace the Mind Sculptor. And you've gotten 1 effect off of it. In this current Modern that is as fast and aggressive as it is, your opponent is waiting for you to tap down, and they're going to play out their creatures, and they're going to attack you heavily, or they're going to play their heavy spells once you give them that opportunity. And chances are those things are going to kill your Jace the Mind Sculptor anyway. So you could argue that you wait until later in the game, potentially whenever you have 6 lands, tap 4 for Jace, and you still have mana open for a remand. The problem with that is you are now on turn 6, and you have to be winning the game by turn 6 in Modern. Even if you are playing just a very counter-heavy deck, you're trying to control your opponent, and you're generally making the game go longer. Turn 6 in Modern, you've got to be winning the game. And playing Jace is not how you win the game. It's how you want to go as far as a long-term strategy. Now, if we kick that back to Standard, at the time in Standard, turn 4, getting to start off making your deck incredibly consistent was amazing. But in the context of Modern, especially now, you just don't have till turn 6 to start making your deck consistent. Your deck is going to have to be consistent without draw manipulation before turn 6, or else you're going to lose the game. Plus, you have plenty of spells within Blue's arsenal that are cheap that are going to help you manipulate your draws to get to where you want to be. So as far as whether Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to be relevant, I'm sure that it will see play. Don't see a problem with maybe teching it in as a 1 of, maybe a 2 of. There are definitely going to be people that try to build around this card, but I definitely just don't see it being fast enough to keep up. And so overall, I just really don't see Jace being that impactful. Could be completely wrong. I am a Yu-Gi-Oh player after all. We're not the brightest bunch. But I really don't see Jace making that much of an impact. But you know, we'll have to see going forward as far as how Pro Tours go. But as far as blue decks go, I expect to see maybe 1-2 copies as far as decks that are going to be consistently winning. But I'm not worried about my opponent dropping a Jace at this point. And they kind of mention in the article segueing into Bloodbraid Elf that although it's not the reason why they simultaneously released these two, Bloodbraid Elf does kind of check Jace the Mind Sculptor, right? It's a perfect example of me saying that on your fourth turn you tap out completely. Your opponent now plays Bloodbraid Elf, has haste and 3. If you used his 0 ability, which is what you most likely did, your Jace is now dead, and you only got 1 turn out of it. And Bloodbraid Elf has now cascaded into something else. It's a huge minus for you in many matchups. But let's look at Bloodbraid Elf. And like I said, Bloodbraid Elf is mostly about the cards around it. So let's look at those cards. So I have a few Jund lists pulled up that we can kind of look at very quickly. And the thing that I want you guys to pay attention to here is that every card in this list, and this is a pretty standard list, and even the lists that deviate from this are generally all going to be 3 or lower drops. You might have the legendary werewolf guy that's 4-drop. He might change things up a little bit, but I mean your Lilianas, your all your fatal pushes, all of your cantrips there, along with your creatures, they're all going to get out onto the board whenever you play Cascade with a 4-drop. You're going to see the same thing in this list. These are kind of the more up-to-date lists. Olivia would interfere, but generally you side deck Olivia, but this list has it in front. I'm definitely not, oh, there he is. Definitely not saying that these lists are typical, just some of the top lists that I pulled up very quickly. And then the other deck that I think may be impacted is, oh, what is this? Naya Zoo. Naya Zoo also has that issue of all of your creatures being under 4, which means that they're going to drop whenever you play that. Whenever you play, why can I not think of the card? Bloodbraid Elf. So everything's going to hit the board for you, which is going to work out very nice. The only thing in a lot of lists is Collected Company. Not all Zoo decks play Collected Company, but that's going to be the only thing that you're not going to hit. You're still going to hit your lightning bolts. You're going to hit all of your creatures. So you're not running into anything that you're going to be going through that you can't hit, which is very important in a Cascade situation. If you don't know what Cascade does, essentially you cast it, and as you cast it, you exile top cards from your deck until you hit a non-land card with a converted mana cost less than the creature that you're cascading off of. So it would need to be 3 or lower for Cascade to trigger on that card. But overall, Jund has not changed much since Bloodbraid Elf was banned. It didn't hurt the deck. We still see Jund perform very well in tournaments, just not the 31% that we saw. In fact, Modern is incredibly diverse right now, and considered to be one of the best points in Modern, which is why people were so upset about this ban list, but we'll talk about that in a second whenever we go to close things out. But so I see Bloodbraid Elf as being a great tool for Jund, but again, this is a turn 4 card, and is that going to be relevant? You really have to wonder. If you're playing Jund, by turn 4, you're generally going to want to be winning the game. But I definitely see Bloodbraid Elf being a 2 of, maybe a 3 of. But the thing is, the question really that we have to ask here is, does it break the deck? And for me, the answer is no. It's going to be great value when you drop it, but this is going to be on turn 4. Your opponent has plenty of opportunities to build themselves up and be able to counteract Bloodbraid Elf at that time. And it's not that this card automatically wins you the game. So as we have gotten to a point where Standard is faster and more powerful, I just don't see turn 4 cards being as powerful as they used to be. So that's kind of where I'm at. Really, to me, it is all about that 4 cost. And like I said, to sum it up, don't really see Jace making an impact. Bloodbraid Elf, I think, will definitely be included in Jund. Maybe in Naya Zoo, but probably going to be just in Jund as maybe a 2 or 3 of. Maybe 4 if you're not playing any other 4 drops. But we'll have to wait and see. I would definitely play Bloodbraid Elf in my Jund deck if I could afford to have one. But when I play it online, I definitely would include Bloodbraid Elf. It's good to see her back, and good to see Jace back, because, like I said, I think that it was time. If you take a look, to jump back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Right before we clear this out, this is their ban list as far as what is banned and what is limited to a certain amount. Yu-Gi-Oh! Suffers from needing to alleviate some of these spots. There's a lot of cards here that just don't need to be here anymore and can be taken off. And I think that we're seeing the same case here. I'm not going to speculate as to what other cards could come off in that kind of regard, but I think that we're going to be fine. I don't think we're going to see Modern be broken by these cards, but if you've got them, you can definitely sell them. Prices have been a little wonky here with excitement, but if you're concerned that this is going to be the end of the world, I'm going to knock on wood and say that I think you're going to be just fine. Really, the only thing that I see changing is swapping out some stuff for Bloodbraid Elf in your Jund deck. But I definitely want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Change is scary, and it's just human nature. So we'll have to see. The reaction has been mixed, but I'm fine with it. So let me know what you guys think. Whether this is going to be a big change, whether there's not going to be a change. Are you going to include Jace or Bloodbraid in any of your decks, and how do you think they're going to affect them? And is there anything else on the ban list that you could see coming off and it not being a problem? That I'd be really interested to hear. So let me know down in the comments below. Always love to hear from you guys. And let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this as far as the news videos. I really enjoy doing them. But with all that being said, I'll chill for a little bit. If you like the video, leaving us a like really helps. It shows your support. And if you really want to support us, you can subscribe to the channel. That way you never miss any of the videos from all the wonderful people here at Magic Gathering Strat. And if you like the kind of stuff that I do have my own YouTube channel, and the link to it as well as my Facebook page will be down in the description below. All of those wonderful buttons for you to click. We do appreciate you, and I will see you in the next episode.